Welcome to the Next Step Podcast with Jay
and Brad. Wait,
Lexi.
I'm Brad.
Jay, Lexi,
All
and
right.
Brad.
All right.
Jay.
All right. Did you hear that ding on there?
Yeah.
Remember earlier in my phone ding because
Yeah. Who was that?
well, that was a
texting you.
text that came when I was playing it the first time, and then we decided to keep
Yeah,
it.
just keep it. It's
yeah,
cool.
it keeps it raw, right?
Yeah, totally raw.
Because we even messed up on the Brad and Jay thing. All right, episode 2. We want to start with boundaries,
Yep.
and
Sorry.
I'm really intrigued, like that balance of not giving a crap about where he's at. You're gonna be okay with it, with also balancing the compassion, the love, the empathy.
Detachment with love.
Yeah,
What they call it.
is okay?
Yeah, that's what they call it.
That's an Alanon term.
Yeah, it's an Alanon term. Detaching with love.
How do you perfect that? How do you detach with love?
Well, I'm not very great at it, to be honest. I think.
How does one go about getting? I mean, it's probably. Is anyone perfect at that?
No,
Okay.
I think that that's totally takes practice, and to know.
Isn't that charity?
Yeah.
Charity, pure love of Christ. Is that?
Well, so there is a little bit like, especially when you talk in like church terms, I think that's why there might be so many miserable marriages and divorces, is because I think in the church it's like, no, you just love like Christ does, right? Like just love. And I think that was so much of the reason why I wasn't getting it before, because it was like, you just gotta love them. And like, I think that's
love will fix them.
Yeah, like love will fix them. Or like even the other book that the church has, it's like a lot of like great things like praying, and that's great, but like you need the tools to like know how to do all of this stuff, because it's not something that you can just like pray away. Like you're never gonna pray your addiction away, or your spouse is never gonna pray that, like, you know what I mean, vice versa. Like it's just never gonna be prayed away. Like you have to do the inner work on both sides. Like the inner work for the spouse and the inner work for the person in recovery. Or
well,
just,
if I remember right, like you can pray to maybe stop, but that doesn't mean you're in recovery. You could stop temporarily, and you could stop drinking
and
or doing something.
There have been people, I mean, that to a certain extent have said that like they've prayed and like the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the desire was like removed from their hearts. Mm-hmm. Like for some people that is like true. So
pure miracle, right? Some people cured of cancer, like they have cancer, and then all of a sudden the doctor looks at a screenshot and it's gone.
Right.
Or X-ray.
So,
there's a drawing.
So this is a drawing that I did in my.
Your kids do that? Just kidding.
Stop. So this is like taken from my journal. And like, this is like the best way that my sponsor, and it also actually talks about it literally here in the Alanon book. And I can read that to you guys right now, because it's actually so good. It's only like a little couple paragraphs. Sorry, there's a
lot of nail pictures.
Inspo for my nails. You know my nails are important to
Those
me.
nails are nice.
I know.
The checkerboard's solid. You have to pay Vans for that checkerboard pattern?
Oh, okay, here we go.
Okay.
It's called Letting Go of Those Not in Recovery. It says, we can go forward with our life and recovery even though someone we love is not yet in recovery. Picture a bridge. On one side of the bridge, it is cold and dark. We stood there with others in the cold and darkness, doubled over in pain. We did not know there was a bridge. We thought we were trapped on a cliff. Then some of us got lucky. Our eyes opened by the grace of God because it was time. We saw the bridge. People told us what was on the other side, warmth, light, and healing from our pain. We could barely glimpse or image this, but we decided to start the trek across the bridge anyway. We tried to convince the people around us on the cliff that there was a bridge to a better place, but they wouldn't listen. They couldn't see it. They couldn't believe. They were not ready for the journey. We decided to go alone because we believed and because people on the other side were cheering us onward. The closer we got to the other side, the more we could, so I don't have it, but it's basically like the closer we got to the other side, the more you can see the light. And so, like, in the left side, you can see the girl. I thought
that was a wave at first.
No, it's not.
Now I see it perfectly. Yeah. The bridge, so, like, you're not going to see the sun because it's setting.
She's in darkness. Yeah, she's in darkness. She's, like, doubled over. She's, like, basically lost all hope.
You're an artist. You should paint this. Could you paint it?
Yeah, I actually probably could.
You should.
I know. I actually was thinking I need to paint again because it's been a while. But
you should come over to Julie's been painting rocks lately. Have you seen her?
I should.
Her painting.
I did see the rocks.
Collection?
Yeah, I did see the rocks.
She's like,
super
maybe
cute.
that's how she's dealing with me. Maybe.
Yeah,
she
maybe.
just starts painting. You're doing it on paper.
Next year I'm gonna come to your house. There's like 1,000 painted rocks.
things aren't going well over the
No, but with healing, they can. So then as you get closer to the other side with the sun and the birds and the chirping and the flowers, like you see that you don't have to stay on the other side of the bridge. And once you get to the sunny side of the bridge, you can like wave to your other people. Like wave to the people that are not yet wanting recovery, whether that's a spouse or whether that's your addicted loved one. You can be like, hey, recovery's awesome. Come, like, I promise you, you're going to find happiness. You're going to find healing. But you really have to have the other person want to get honest with themselves and want to be ready. And so I think that's why for me, I knew like Jay wasn't ready. And I got to a point like with prayer, with meditation, that I was like, okay with that. Well, I could still have a loving relationship with him. It might have not been the best relationship because I was still trying to figure that out. But it was saying like, hey, I'm going to go this way. If you want to stay over there on the dark side, like that is your decision. But I'm going to go to the sun because it's like way better and happy. And I love it over there. So that's kind of.
It is working.
Yeah.
Like I think Jay said he saw that.
Yeah.
And that was a big motivator for him.
Yeah. I think when you do the inner work, there's just like a lightness, there's like a happiness, there's an underlying peace that you just like can't deny, that you can't like express in your everyday living. And like, yes, things still trip me up, but they don't like knock me down to where I'm like, man, I can't focus. I feel so overwhelmed. Like some people can't get out of bed. Some people don't take care of themselves physically. Some people lose jobs because they are so concerned with what their loved one is doing that they like they've lost themselves completely. And so I think when you decide to take the journey of healing, it's uncomfortable. It is so uncomfortable, and it's really not fun sometimes. Like
it takes faith too, because
a lot of prayer.
Yeah. That's where the inspiration comes of seeing others walk over the bridge.
Yes,
that's why going to meetings seems to help, because like they were here and they walked over that metaphorically bridge, and I want to be where they are. What'd they do?
Well, every daily reading that you're going to read, whether you're in AA or Alanon, it talks about your higher power. Every single reading does. So basically what you're saying is like, God, I'm literally like, there's a really cool analogy. I can't remember. I think it's in step 3, but it's basically of you're on a tandem bike with Jesus Christ, and you're in the front.
Does it actually say tandem bike?
Yeah, it says tandem bike, and it says Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is like literally steering, and you're doing all the pedaling. And it talks about how like in the beginning of recovery, that kind of it's like, yeah, you're kind of like letting Jesus Christ like take the wheel, but when are you going to let him take the pedaling too? And it just talks about like how much easier together when you pedal together, how much faster and like how much just easier it is to maneuver your bike when you're doing it with Jesus Christ, when you're doing it with God, whoever, both of them. It's amazing. It's just like you can really like palpably feel their love for you when you're like going to them every day being like, I'm surrendering, or what do I do? Or maybe I just need to have patience. Like I think a lot of it is just kind of like waiting it out. Whereas before I always wanted to make decisions like right then. Like it was just like, okay, this is happening, like what, like I would call my sponsor and be like, I just need to like make a decision. And she would always be like, she's so good. She'd be like, well, who says that you have to make a decision? And I'm like, well, I guess my mind, me. And she's like, exactly. Like and that's why it's so important to like take one day at a time. That's why it's so important to not be reactive when you're maybe in a crisis with your loved one. Maybe they are using, maybe they're out of it, and there's no need to even talk to them, because you can't really talk to someone that's either drinking alcohol or like completely super high on pills, or even with pornography. I've really seen like when someone's doing that a lot, like they're in a whole different headspace. And I feel like even people that are maybe using pornography a lot, you see a very like angry side of that person. And so I think
the science is coming out now pretty clear that it's brain changing.
Oh, for sure. It's completely changing your brain.
Yeah, so rewiring your brain.
This does not just have to be like, and I think that's why some maybe LDS people get tripped up, because it's like, well, I don't maybe see like a physical change, like as far as like, being high or something, or like when you're super drunk.
I would say behavioral addictions they seem more complex.
Yes.
Because whether you're talking about food, porn, sex, can you name a couple other, shopping?
I think there are a lot social media.
Social
That was a
media.
big one for me.
So those are like they don't smell.
No, you can't. It's like
you're not. You're not changing. You're not changing your headspace for a long period of time.
But I will say, I feel like the people that are indulging in those things, like they're definitely, like they definitely like separate themselves from people.
Emotionally separate.
Like, yeah, you can feel that. You know what I mean? Like they're just kind of more closed off, or they want to spend more time alone, or they just don't want to. It's almost like they can't be around family. It makes them feel uncomfortable, And so I feel like.
So there's a weird, I want to go into this and then we'll wrap it up by talking about setting boundaries. Because I think for all of any of these behaviors, having the appropriate boundaries and so when we have in our church's 12-step meetings, there's a mixed crowd. Like you've got a meth addict, alcoholic, porn addict, guy who swears, wants to stop swearing.
I love it.
Spouses that are in there. Like it's a wide range of reasons why they're there.
Yeah.
And then it's like not spoken, but like you hear it or you feel it where it's like, well, so-and-so, my spouse or myself, I'm not as bad as that person because porn's not as bad as like injecting heroin. Like I'm not going to kill myself on this. And then you have the others like, well, I wish my husband was addicted to pills because he's cheating on me with this. Yeah. Like, and it's high emotion on both sides as far as justifying, rationalizing. It's not as bad. It's worse. All of those things. You view those not much different.
No.
Well,
I think that like the way anybody would like view it is that obviously when it comes to like substance abuse, like I think sometimes it is life or death. You know what I mean?
I remember mentioning early on in meetings and I remember like after meeting chatting with some of the dudes and I mentioned that like and I'm curious, I'm like, so like it's drugs particularly, especially with opiates.
Right.
Is like life or death, like more so than these other things, which may not kill you, right?
Right.
And I remember a brother looking me in the face like, you know how many times I've stared down a barrel of a gun?
Yeah.
And
spiritual death, like
no, literally,
well, and like
literally stared down the barrel of a gun.
Yeah. And
I had the chills, and I'm like, I don't know how many. And he's like, and I know many people have taken their life because they can't control themselves. They want to stop and they can't. And he's like, my addiction was no different than when I hear that guy talk about it. It's my brain is doing the dance in my brain is no different.
It's the exact same dance that it would be.
Yeah. And there's been, I mean, just recently a few suicides because of sexual addiction, complications with it or whatever.
I mean, I guess it's interesting because like I've dealt with it all, right? And
but the hurt on the other side may be different.
I think this is like the best way I can explain it, especially for spouses, because a sexual sin or pornography, it feels very personal to the spouse. And
so me taking a pill is different than me looking at some porn.
Right. Or like maybe cheating, And so like usually what I tell wives, where it's like it's hard not to take that personal, but it really has nothing to do with them. It has nothing to do with the way you look or how sexy you are, or if you're not putting out enough or any of that stuff. Like it really all has to do with the fact that like that is what he's using to escape reality. That is what he's using to cope with his stresses. Like, I mean, I've literally dealt with it all with Jay. You know what I mean? And it's like when he wasn't using, he was,
check here. Maybe they're similar. Is the first drink you take, pills you take, you're doing it for the excitement,
right?
Pornography, sex, hooker, the massage, whatever. The excitement is there.
And listen, it is fun. Like, I mean, Jay has shared that, right? Like drinking or whatever is fun in the beginning. Mm-hmm. It might feel super exciting in the beginning, like porn or cheating or whatever. You're like, whoa, this is like.
But then it gets to the addiction part that's no longer fun.
Right. And then
that's why I think a lot of people don't understand.
Well, I think too, with sexual sin, it's really hard because that feels so
Is it personal?
dirty.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like people could look at you and be like, oh man, you're gross. Like, I can't believe you would ever look at that. You know what I mean? But I always have to remind like wives that I'm talking to, like, he's not doing it because, I mean, yeah, obviously it probably feels good in the moment, right? But that's not his initial reason for doing that. And so you have to remind them there's a reason behind the behavior. And I feel like the more I've learned about addiction and trauma, like, I feel like that has, I said that in the last one, is like, that's where the biggest difference is this last time with me and Jay, is because like, we're actually like figuring out what our trauma is and trying to heal it. And if you're not willing to get honest with what the trauma is that's not making you, but making you want to do that type of behavior, yeah,
Leading you towards that, maybe more inclined to it.
It's going to be really hard to like not do that because you're not healing the underlying issue. And so I think that's the biggest thing that loved ones have to remember. I mean, in the beginning, I just didn't understand. I was like, oh, if you love me, you would just stop. Like, you just don't do it anymore. But it was not that simple. And there were, me and Jay call them pain bodies.
What is that? What do you mean?
So a pain body is kind of like what we've learned through addiction, that pain body can be any kind of trauma you experienced, whether it be like sexual abuse, physical abuse, maybe you, I don't even know, like lost your teddy bear or something when you were younger and you felt super alone and afraid. And sometimes when you get triggered, you go back to that childlike person that got lost, or, you know, just whatever traumatic event happened to you. Like, that is kind of like what can stem some of this trauma that brings you to these places of wanting to use and escape reality and all these different things. So I think for Jay, you know, not knowing his father and being raised by, you know, a stepdad that he just didn't get along with and things like that, like, it was really traumatizing for him. And this
is where the empathy comes in, and the understanding.
Well, yeah, like even one of these big fights that we've had, like we probably had like some of the biggest fights that we've ever had in the last like 6 months, because like I'm not just staying silent anymore. Like, I'm kind of being more combative, I guess you could say, towards him. And there was like a moment where he like totally freaked out, and you know, then I want to get angry and be like, you're a psychopath or whatever, you know, but then later when we like calmed down after the fight, he literally was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I could literally feel myself go back to that like childlike state where I felt like I was going to be abandoned. And because I left before, I think he just got so fearful that all he could do was kind of like, you know, like enrage a little bit, or like get so like try to control the whole situation, that he was like trying to be manipulative with his words. And so it's like, when you can like really pinpoint, and then you're like, oh man, I'm really sorry that you felt like you're going to be abandoned. It totally makes sense why you freak out. And then it was like, we could just apologize to each other and move forward. But if you don't know that you have that trauma, then like, how are you going to like fix these underlying issues? So, and this goes both ways. Like, this totally is like on my side of the end too. Like, where I'm healing from, you know, like relationships that I had when I was in high school that were like super damaging to me emotionally. I wasn't in a position to fully understand like some of the things that I was doing and like how they were damaging me emotionally and spiritually. And so I kind of had to like go back to that place. And when I did my 4-step, I was kind of weird for like a couple days after. I was like super sad. And like, I thought that I would feel like, oh, I got like all this stuff off my chest.
Yeah.
But then I was like being really closed off with him. He's like, what's your deal? So then I like called my sponsor and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I feel like all this stuff I brought up is just like making me sad. And she's like, it's okay. Just feel it. But you know, you're not.
Then the 5th steps
is like moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's like, feel sad for a second, but know that you're not that person anymore. And I'm like, oh yeah. That's why a sponsor is so crucial. Cause like you can really get stuck in your head with some of this stuff, you know? So.
And that's why we call it the next step.
The next
podcast
step is very important.
What's the answer?
The next step.
So that compassion and doing those steps help you understand where you're coming from personally.
Right.
What may lead to some of these inclinations. And how do you how do you wrap these boundaries? So like so it sounded like Jay was being fearful for maybe crossing a boundary. And I guess if I'm thinking about a relationship, it's probably unspoken in most relationships, but it's kind of known.
I think
like if I come home and my wife's in bed with another dude, it's probably over.
Yeah, totally.
But if the plumber's actually working on the sink and maybe his shirt's off.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
So,
but then that leads to doubt and distrust.
Yeah.
But I don't think a wife, it's not spoken. I'm like, okay, if this line gets crossed, we're done.
There are some.
But in addiction with Alanon, is it important to lay that out and say I'm assuming some of these aren't real, but like on your 5th pill, or when you actually go to the needle for opiates, or when you get an STD, like is that helpful to
so every case, yes, I think every case is different. There are women that I only say women because like that's
your perspective.
Yeah. So I would say for most spouses, it's like there are some like very definite boundaries. It's like, if you cross this, like you're sleeping on the couch or something. If you cross this boundary, like you're going to be kicked out of the house. Like I think a big one, especially if you're, like say pills or alcohol, like for me, when I talk to some of these girls that are like people that I sponsee, it's like, hey, if they're high or using, like don't have them be in the house. If they want to go use, that's fine. They can't be in the house when they're high or drunk, or whatever.
Is it really fine though? Like you say it's fine.
I mean, it's not fine, but if they want to go ruin their lives, you're not going to stop them. Like if that's what they really want to do, if they really want to go drinking one night, then...
So the boundary is, if you're going to choose to do that, this is what my choice is. Yeah,
this is the consequence for your behavior. And I think porn is a little different. There seems to be a ton of relapse with pornography. I feel like...
Because it's everywhere. Like, well, that's always like...
Right, it's like on your phone is like...
Like I don't even know what is considered porn nowadays, because what I think is porn is like normal,
just like girl in bikini or something.
Yeah. But like where that line gets drawn, things like that.
Like, are you looking at it more? Are you like messaging?
When I'm scrolling my feed, am I going a little slower or am I?
Well, and some of that too is like on the other person. Like, are they willing to be honest with you? Because you might not even know some of that stuff. Some people have check-ins. I don't know if I really totally agree with that, because I feel that
would probably be something to work with your sponsor.
Yeah,
maybe,
because you also don't want to take a mother role, like where it's like, if you do that, that seems like a very parenting role, and like in a marriage, that's one of our problems is like it's never been like super equal, and so I feel like to make it equal, you can't have like a parenting kind of like style towards your spouse. I mean, I just don't think
because you're not a parent, you're a spouse.
Right.
The relationship is different.
So I feel like whatever makes you feel like if this is like a spouse speaking to their addicted loved one, it's like whatever.
If you're sponsoring someone right now and they're like, Lex, do I put a boundary down? Like what I want to say, you have a hypothetical situation or you want to make one up?
No, I just think it's more like.
Have you been asked this question?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
I just say if it's something that's making you spin out or something that's emotionally hurting you, then you should definitely have a boundary of what you're willing to put up with and what you're not. And like obviously as a sponsor, you're never supposed to like actually tell people what to do in their marriage. But for some people, like it is safer to separate it. If it's like one of those things where it's like chronic relapse, like they're not getting a grasp on recovery. Like
if you hadn't told Jay I hate you and I'm leaving you, he wouldn't have.
I don't. Who
knows what?
Yeah,
right?
You have to have like somewhere where it's like.
Not recommending you tell everyone I hate you and divorce, but like,
no. Like it's not.
Like that stands out because that was such a bold and.
But I will say, most times when you see an addicted loved one make some big changes, it's probably because their wife's finally putting their foot down and saying, "I'm not literally putting up with this anymore. Like I'd rather get a divorce." Then have to put up with your behavior all the time because it's making our whole house sick. Mm-hmm. So whatever the circumstances
does Alanon help you identify what the boundary should be in your relationship?
Yes. So
How does it do that?
I think when you first start reading Alanon, like, let me just go through step 1 because step 1 is literally the best. So some of the
Hold that up for the camera to just show there's tons of notes in here.
I'm like all over this. Like my whole book is basically like written up, and I have like
it's great.
Triple stars means it's like
take
super
notes?
good.
Did you take notes that good in school?
No, never. Of course not. But so like understanding emotional
school, you're
stages.
like, when am I going to use this in real life?
Totally.
And then you're like, I'm using this tomorrow.
Like honestly, this should be taught in like high school, like so that you can like have. My problem was I just never had like, very like healthy relationships.
But you wouldn't have been motivated to want to learn this.
Like no, never. So it's like and honestly that's why I'm so thankful for the addiction. Like I had to go through this to understand like just how like sick I was. Like how was I so sick that I put up my self-worth was so low that I put up with some of this like very abusive behavior. Like you have, like as a woman or a man, and if you're in a very like sick relationship, you have to ask yourself like, why am I putting up with something like this? So like here are some of the stages: shock and confusion, anger, resolution and acceptance, recognizing unhealthy behaviors, rescuing behaviors. That was my biggest one.
So
my
some
favorite.
of these, one might be one of those.
Denial, addiction. Denial is a rescuing behavior because you would just want to act like it's not happening. Another rescuing is enabling. So your addict is maybe not going to work and you're calling in for him saying he's sick, or your son is maybe he got arrested and you're bailing him out of jail. Like these are all enabling behaviors because you're not really fully letting them have the consequences of their behavior. And so
for some of these, the consequences, the fear of consequences of death.
So that is a really hard one to come to terms with, that if someone either commits suicide or overdoses, it's not your fault. But as a parent, can you imagine? I mean, I've heard some parents talk about it before in meetings, and it's just like heart-wrenching. But there is so the drama triangle is the victim persecuting. And so for me, in that triangle, I loved being the victim. That's when I was talking about my story. It's like, oh, poor me. Like my husband is.
Where did you feel you loved it? Where did you get the dopamine hit from that?
Well, I think my whole life I was a victim.
Okay.
Like as far as like probably from 15 on. Okay. Like love being the victim of whatever situation I was in. It was like I couldn't get myself out of the situation. Oh, my life is so horrible. Why is this happening to me? And then I was like constantly like praying to God to make it stop, but I didn't want to like actually do any of the work to like figure out, you know, like I talk about in my meetings a lot, like how like I just had really low self-esteem. It wouldn't look like it on the outside.
No.
But from the inside, I had like really low self-esteem. Like I just didn't think I was worthy, you know? And that was partly because of some of the decisions I made as like a young adult, you know? I just didn't feel like I was a good person.
Well, and if I put the gospel spin on this,
right,
that's what God wants us to confess, repent, change,
right,
so that we don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
Let's get that. That's in most churches. You take the sacrament so that you can be lifted up and take advantage of that atonement.
Right. Well, and that's why.
And Satan, on the other hand, wants you to feel like shiz.
Totally.
You did this. You're horrible. Yeah. He wants you to be miserable.
You're the worst.
Why would you do that?
I think so. I'm a young women's leader right now, and like, it's crazy because like 14, like where the age that they're at is like pretty much like my turning point of like when I started to make like some really bad decisions. I was like such a follower. Like I just wanted to be cool, you know? And, so I tried to like put myself like back in like their shoes, and
when you're sitting in there and you're looking at these girls,
and I'm just like, I'm super honest with them. And we've been meditating together, and I have them do this mantra where we tell ourselves we love ourselves, because that was probably the biggest part, is that I just didn't love myself enough to like say no or to tell somebody that I didn't feel comfortable with doing that.
And you didn't grow up with social media where you see
No.
perfection
Oh my
and
gosh.
everyone having the best time of their life always. Like
no,
you
FOMO.
look at this and like,
I can't even. I get FOMO. That's why I have to get off Instagram.
can you imagine a 14-year-old dealing with that? Like,
No, I
that's a
actually
lot to
can't.
deal with.
Like, and that's the crazy part is like our world is so crazy now. Like you really have to be like in tune with what's going on inside you. And so that's what I'm trying to help them with, because that's just something that I didn't have. Like I just wasn't in tune with like my soul, which was like divine, but I couldn't see that. And so like, you know, like even the other day I was talking to somebody and she was having a hard time, and I'm like, let's sit right now and tell ourselves we love ourselves. And
you were having some time, or she was?
Yeah, let's like if me and you do it right now. Let's do it right now.
Okay.
All our followers right now.
Okay.
We're gonna say we're
What do I
gonna
do?
we're gonna
This
tell
feels a little
ourselves.
weird,
Watch how weird this feels.
Okay.
So say out loud that you love yourself.
Like, I love myself.
Mhm.
I love myself.
I love myself.
Do I keep doing it?
Yeah, let's do it 5 times.
I love myself. I love myself.
I love myself.
I love myself.
I love myself.
I love myself.
I love myself.
I love myself.
I love myself.
I love myself.
How awkward does that feel?
It feels awkward because there's something in me to like keep my ego in check. And like like I hear that, and there's like so many dichotomies with this, because ego in check, once our ego gets blown up, then we make stupid decisions.
Yeah.
So how do I love myself without
This is
inflating my
not-
ego?
Yeah, totally. I get what you're saying. It's not like
So
a s-
I would
It's not like
be
a s-
resistant of doing that, because I'm like, I want to try to keep my ego in check.
I don't think it's so much of like an egomaniac. Like I love myself. I'm
Because
the
I
best.
picture some people that are super big egos.
For
They're in
sure.
the mirror and they're like, oh man, they are in love with
no,
themselves.
it's the different kind of love.
Can you explain that?
It's God's love for you. Like for me, when I say that, it's like, is that mine? Sorry. For me, when I say that, that's like God saying it to me.
Okay.
Like I love you. Like I love you. I love you. So for me, it's not really like,
Okay, that's
I'm
very different than the way I was saying it. It was like,
even for my girls, I'm like, hey, this is not something because of how you look. Because a lot of them are like in dance or gymnastics. I'm like, this has nothing to do with like how great you are at something or what you look like.
Theme? Isn't the first part, you are divine worth?
Oh yeah. I
Isn't
don't
first line?
actually. It's different now.
Okay, that
So
was last year's.
I actually haven't learned like the
Okay.
new one. But
I
it's
remember that was
similar.
last year. It was like, you have divine worth.
You are divine worth, right? And that's something I could never feel truly. Like when I've talked about this before, like when I would sing I'm a child of God, like I could sing it and say it, but I didn't really feel it inside. So I think this is like coming from somewhere different, where this is like a God's love, divinity for yourself. For yourself to like make good decisions for yourself, to have boundaries with other people, to have healthy relationships. That's what it's all about for me anyway. But I guess I never even thought about
It's beautiful, but
saying it like I'm so amazing. I love myself.
But that's it is amazing, because there are some people that have such self-hate.
Yeah.
That's not good to have.
No.
And then the other extreme is to have so much self-love that you think you're better than everybody
Yeah.
else. And
Yeah, but if you looked at it like from a God's perspective, then you would know that we're all equal. That it's just a love from him, that he loves you. He wants you to wants you to do good. He wants
it's like your
you
own
to
children. Like,
yeah.
how much can you express how much you love
No.
your kids? And then, because like the spoiled kids, like, if I can do whatever I want because
Yeah.
mom loves me so much, I'll do whatever I want. That's not the kind of love
That's
you
an
want them to
enabling
feel.
parent.
That's not, and God's not enabling.
No.
But if they do screw up, you're there to
Hey.
like, let me help you
Yeah.
get out of this situation.
Well, there's hope here. Like, you know.
What
and
hap-
I think
what
for
happened?
me,
What'd you do? Okay,
Yeah.
let's figure out how to get you out of this.
I think for me, like I felt like I lost so much hope, you know, like a lot, like as like a teenager and then a young adult, like partying and stuff. Like I really lost who I was. Like that divinity part of me was gone because I was just like surrounding myself with like,
Now, the atheist would
not
say
great
that's just
people.
because of your cultist churches just taught you to have that.
maybe, I mean,
No, because you know a lot of people don't go to church to feel that same way.
I think this is a huge one too. It's like, okay, so we're all from God. He created all of us. Every single person on this earth has that light inside of us.
Yes.
So even the ones that are like so far off course, like there's like an innate part of you that wants to connect with God. I really, truly believe,
I believe that too.
So I think
and I think we try to, at different phases of our life, we try to push that down.
Yeah, of course. It's like, I don't want to feel that.
Because it makes us want to change.
Yeah.
Because
change is hard, right?
Yeah. Because when we admit that, then it's like, oh crap, no, I gotta change things.
But I'm saying, like, if you have that own worth for yourself, I'm pretty sure you're gonna start having boundaries for yourself. And that's kind of like where I came from, because I was like, hey, I don't want you to talk to me that way anymore, because I actually feel like I'm worth enough. I love myself enough. God loves me enough that, like, he wouldn't want me to be in a relationship where someone's saying that to me, you know?
I think that's because, like, we're literally children of our Father in heaven. So no, God, your Father in heaven would not want you to be treated that way.
Right. And it's crazy too now, because, like, I see things so differently. Like, even if I'm in a fight with Jay and I could just be like, oh, he's such a blah blah blah, it's like I can totally separate the two. It's like I see the divine and then I see the ego, and I can do it for myself as well.
On that person or on yourself? On
myself and the other person.
Okay.
Like, obviously, if it's myself, it takes me a little longer, because like, you always want to be right? Like, you don't want to be like, I'm wrong, I suck, you know? So it's just really interesting, because I really do see all of us as, like, these divine beings from God, and that we all have that potential. And when we reach the potential, like, it just trickles to others. Like, others want what you have, right? Like, they're just like, oh, dude, that, you know?
So if we circle back to boundaries, what on the outsider looking in, it seems like when you do the steps, who's not an addict, when you do the steps and you're walking to the bridge that you eloquently described, and you're in the sunshine, you're now and you love yourself, and you realize you're a divine daughter of God. Yeah. And you have you're this beautiful person that God loves unlimitedly. Mm-hmm. Then you've done the steps, all that stuff, you've confessed, you're now in a spiritual place to get that personal revelation to know what to do. Right. Yeah. Because when you're not there, you don't know what to do. And you're relying upon, what does this person say? What does this website say? What does that person say? And you get all these people's opinions.
Everything seems really confusing. I've been there before. Everything seems so conflicting, so confusing. Like, you just don't know where to go. And I've still had moments of that, but now I know that I just have to wait it out. Like, if I don't know what I should do in a certain circumstance, I know that I just, like, don't react, don't even say anything, pray on it. Because God's timing is never our timing, like, ever, sometimes right? It is, I mean, sometimes you get that, like, one miracle where you're like, oh, thank you, God. Like, that was so perfect timing, you know? But other times I think he really does, like, want us to, like, seek him out more.
Well, in everything we're talking about here is relationships, your spouse, your children, your loved ones, like
your family.
That's something God's very passionate about, right? And wants to be healthy.
Totally.
And so we are fully entitled to get that inspiration and revelation to know what to do. Yeah. But we have to be in a healthy place to be able to receive it, and then the courage to be able to act on it.
Like, meditating for me, I've like really gotten into meditating like the last 3 months. And honestly, I could say it's like been life-changing. There have been like a lot of things that have definitely like been a catalyst for like change, or maybe like a big spiritual moment. Like, when I first came back to church, like after being 21 and like drinking and like all that stuff, like I had like a crazy spiritual experience with God. It's kind of like that, but I can like have it every day. It's really cool, because like, even the other day when I was meditating, like, I just asked God to like sit there with me. It wasn't like I was asking him for anything, or it wasn't like I needed something. It was just like, just be with me. And I sat there and I could just like feel him. Like, I just see things so, I guess clearer. I don't really know how to explain it. I just know that meditation has brought me like very close to God and like a very real relationship with him.
And I remember we had a text thread and you mentioned about meditating. And I was curious. It
went crazy.
What's that?
The text thread went, like, everybody was like inputting. It was awesome.
It was sweet. Because my curious question is, because the world, and there's this dichotomy, worldly things, I think we're going away from God. Yeah. And away from Jesus.
Totally.
Like, I think.
I just read this thing. It says 30 billion people have 30 million people in the United States have stepped away from their Christian beliefs. Yeah. That's a lot.
It's a lot. But we read in the scriptures, like that's going to happen.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Like it's kind of it freaks us out because like, oh crap, maybe it is that time
Yeah.
that we're reading about. Like I thought that's gonna be
Like a long time.
long time for now. But so I see it. I see that. So same with the love yourself ego.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to be cautious.
Yeah, I get it. I get
And,
you.
and so the meditation, I'm like, okay, is that the worldly way to get away from prayer?
Right.
But on the side note, so many prayers that we do are, I would say most prayers. Can I judge most people?
Like repetitious.
Well, like think of the silly one we do on food. Not it's praying on food's not silly,
Like,
but like
bless it.
let's nourish our bodies, strengthen our bodies,
Totally.
help us to do good. Like we say the same thing over and over again. We're not listening. We're like amen. Boom.
Yeah.
Right. And so many of our prayers are just talking to God, not talking with God. And then in a prayerful sense, meditation is the listening part.
Yeah.
So like I think a lot of times we think of prayer as talking. God, do me this.
Yeah.
Hook me up with this. Can you take care of this for me? Can you
It's
do
like a
this for me?
checklist
Will you do this? Will you
Yeah.
do this? Oh, I'll promise to do this. But will you make sure you do this by tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right? We have this list of things we do.
Like you get stuck in a corner. You're like, oh wait, God, now I really need your help. You
Yeah.
know?
But then how you describe meditation, and I think you said, I guess it's the listening part.
Yeah.
Because like you just didn't mention the asking part before, but meditation is being quiet and listening.
I really feel like too, I mean, everybody has a different way of meditating. And like before I really looked at it as like a kind of like a yoga thing. Like, cause that's the only way that I really ever experienced meditation, I guess.
That's what that term probably
Yeah.
I mean,
I think maybe that's where you got like, is that where you got turned off in the text message when you're like, oh, this seems kind of like not voodoo, but like.
No. I think meditation's awesome.
Yeah.
Language is changing rapidly in society.
Yes.
And so
You could take it
what does that mean?
different.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Because to some person that means, screw God, I'm meditating
Yeah,
so that crystal can tell me what to do.
for sure.
And others are like, no, my Father in heaven is I'm a divine being, and
Yeah.
God, I'm gonna listen to what God has me to do.
Yeah,
Both are meditating.
totally. I get you.
So
I feel like for me too.
I was curious.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good. We got to have questions,
Yeah.
you know? Because I think just like growing up in the church, there's kind of just like, I should rephrase this. You feel like there's only one way to do things. And I feel like as I've kind of like expanded my spirituality, I see truth in like a lot of different areas that like maybe I never would have like thought before. And I feel like
I'll answer probably why I think that is because you just mentioned about the young women's, and you're like, say this prayer, do this way.
Right.
You can have 20 years from now, some woman's like, well, church taught me that I have to say this over and over again, and that's the way to do it.
right.
In reality, that's what works really well for Lexi and for a lot of people.
Totally.
And hopefully that works for you.
Yeah.
Let's give it a try. And that's
You
what
gotta like figure out.
Our church is run by a bunch of amateurs that are like, I'm trying to figure out life. This
Yeah.
works for me. I think
Yeah.
you should do this.
Right.
And
Well, I think before it was like, this is the way. And now it's kind of changing. Like, I think it's just going back to the roots of like God and Jesus Christ, which I think is awesome. And I feel like the more I focus on God and Jesus Christ, like the more I feel them. And that's what I was explaining to my kids the other day. And like we started watching The Chosen. I highly recommend watching The Chosen. It's Christian.
were you upset when Jay binged it without you? Because he mentioned it.
I actually really was. I was like, I can't believe you watched that stuff without me. Like he just went crazy with it. He like watched one whole season without
That's
me.
on
I'm
brand
like,
with him though. Like
totally. Yeah.
Right.
It's like all or nothing, you know.
yeah, he was so mad when he couldn't only do one episode of whatever show was coming out. He's like, what? I can't watch all of them right now?
I know. So I feel like, before, and this is like very new for me too, is that like before I kind of looked at, speak of the devil, here he is right here. It's like, I looked at Jesus Christ as this like untouchable being. And the more I understand like being in the present, being spiritual, being conscious, however word you want to say it, it's like the more I can understand Jesus Christ. It's like when I watch that show, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've kind of had it wrong this whole time. Like if he's here, he would have been my best friend. And that's what I was like explaining to the girls. Like he felt untouchable in the fact that like he was so perfect. He was so this and that I felt like maybe I felt unworthy to talk to him or want to be around him in that sense, like spiritually. And like when I watched that show, I was like, oh my gosh, like he wants to have fun. He wants to like joke around with you. But he also wants to teach you. And I feel like that was the coolest thing that I've learned about Jesus, is that like he would have just been there. Like whatever you're struggling with, like he would want to help you. He would want to like understand your situation and like help you figure out how to get out of it. And so I feel like in that way, like with the 12 steps, like I truly feel like God and Jesus like literally put this in my hand, because I was at a point where I just was getting to that point where I was feeling like completely lost again. Like, who am I? What am I doing? Like I felt like because I wasn't loving myself and just kind of like being in this relationship that was really toxic. Like our marriage has been toxic. To change that now after being married for 10 years, that's uncomfortable and it's heavy and it's a lot of work. There's so much work involved. And
Is it worth it though? Is it better now?
Yeah.
Because you're putting the work in.
We've always put the work in, but this seems different this time. It really seems like we're actually like kind of just like letting God and Jesus Christ guide us more. Whereas before, I think we were still so much like in ego that like we wanted to do it our way and only our way. And like there was no, you know what I mean?
We'll
so
wait
like
till your kids get a little older. They're getting to this next phase.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be crazy, right?
Right now, you guys are awesome.
I already feel it.
Right now, you guys are awesome to them. In a couple years, they're going to start to think you're not so awesome.
I know. It's going to be weird. But once again, it's like, I don't know. From Alanon, in an Alanon perspective, like, I think before I would have beat myself up a lot about it. Like, say if one of my kids just goes like crazy off the deep end or something. Like, I feel like now I would just know that like I've taught them the best I could. Like, I really feel like I'm teaching my kids like what I really wish I would have known. Like, I'm trying to teach them how to love themselves. I'm trying to teach them to like, even Rusty, right? Like, he doesn't necessarily, I don't know. He's like 11, so it's hard to tell. But I would say like out of all of my kids, he just doesn't seem like super into church all that much, you know? And like
a lot of 11-year-old boys that are into stuff, sports.
Is you know, it's like fading out. Like, whereas before, like he would say prayers a lot at night. Like I wouldn't even have to ask him. And then like recently it seems like, hey, do you want to say a prayer, buddy? He's like, no, I'm good. You know? So I was like, I was a little taken back when he first started doing that. And so I just told him like, hey, if this way of prayer is not working for you, like all I just ask you is that like when you're out in the water surfing, like thank God for the ocean. Thank God that you have these waves to like feel a part of him with, you know what I mean? So like you kind of, it's just like this very weird, it's like what you're saying. It is definitely weird to be like, I used to wipe your butt and just feed you and clean up your mess. But now I'm like literally sculpting you to be a person. And it's really scary to be like, you're going to choose your own path. And I really hope it's this path. But if you choose a different path, like I have to be willing to like love you and
set boundaries.
Yeah. Totally set boundaries, because it's a very, that's why boundaries is so hard, because it's like this really fine line of being like, hey, I love you, but also maybe this and this is not acceptable.
I'll still love you if you cross this boundary, but this is not acceptable.
So it's kind of like this.
And here's why.
And
here's why.
Where it's like, okay, well, I don't know. I feel like when I started this, it
sounds like everyone, even if they don't have an addiction, their family can benefit from this.
I'm like literally tell that to everybody. I'm like, honestly, everyone needs Alanon. And Gary would say that too. Gary's kind of like our mascot in the meeting, because he was an AA'er and then he came to Alanon and he's just like, you know.
He's got a little wisdom.
Yeah. And so he you know, you can see the benefit for even his business relationships. He even talks about that a lot. Like, anyways.
Well, let's end with some practical stuff, because this is some other questions we get for Lexi is like, well, it was probably me, but did someone tell you to start this meeting and lead a spouse meeting?
I think it was you, probably.
Might have been me.
No, I think, well, when we first started it was like there were so many wives coming to the ARP meeting that there were some people that felt uncomfortable doing that, like we talked about before. So we were like, okay, well, if you feel uncomfortable, let's make like a separate thing.
So when when you guys moved into our ward and you shared that first couple Sundays.
Yeah.
That like triggered something in me.
Yeah.
And I had come to realization, like I've known like the church is us. So like, I don't need to wait for someone to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Let's just go do it. Like,
Totally.
Does this help build the kingdom?
Like, we're the people, right?
We're the people. Many of us made covenants to build the kingdom of God. So that's what helped inspire me to like, let's do what we don't have a 12-step meeting up here. Let's get this going. Like, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? What do we need to do? Let's do this. And all of a sudden they're like, well, yeah, we'll do it.
Following the inspiration, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that was like a big pull for you. Cause like, why all of a sudden, like, why would you be like, this is weird. I'm really feeling like
it's kind of weird. It was kind of weird. I'm like, why would I be doing this?
So
Come
much,
on.
Yeah.
Like, I'm hoping they say no.
But really, I'm
hoping they say no so I don't have to do this. And they're like, that sounds like a great idea. I'm like, really?
You're like, okay, dang.
And then the same thing of like, Lex, we need to do this spouse. I mean, like,
Yeah.
tell me about this out. Like, was learning the whole thing. I'm like, I think you should do it.
Yeah.
And you did it. And you're still doing it.
Yeah.
And you're still benefiting from it.
Yeah.
And so there are, I get emails like, well, our stake doesn't do it. Our church, like other faiths, like, well, we don't do that. What can we do? I'm like
no one does.
Just do it.
Yeah.
You do it.
You got to start it.
You do it. Maybe you got that inspiration like I could have said, hey, you guys should do this. And they were like, yeah. And then it wouldn't have gotten done.
Right.
And then it takes.
Like even one of the girls that comes to our meeting, so she lives like on the East Coast. Like there's like a lot of people from Zoom are totally from different states that come to our Zoom.
Because if you did this meeting back, I think from our podcast early on.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like
or word of mouth.
Yeah. Another girl's like Arizona. Like it's just been really cool. But anyways, so in New York, right? Like you would think that they would have all sorts of stuff. But she was like, well, our ward doesn't have anything like this. And so like, anyways, it is one of those things where it's like, hey, you can make this possible. If not, at least get the book.
So
at least get the book so that you can kind of understand some of these terms. And
let's say, boom, something happened. You're living in some other state.
Yeah.
There's no ARP. There's no spousal meeting.
Oh, I would get one started so fast.
How would you do it? What would you do? Give me.
I mean, honestly, if like I went through the church and they weren't having it, like I would probably just start like something at my own house.
Okay. And what would you do?
Well, you have to get a book, and you definitely need to have someone that knows how to do it. Okay. Like that has been through the steps before.
That's key, right?
So
someone
whether
that's been
or not,
through the steps.
Yeah, you're going to an actual Alanon meeting and meeting someone there that can sponsor you.
And I would imagine you could go there and meet someone at Alanon and say, hey, I need to start one in my church.
Yeah.
Will you come help me?
Totally.
9 out of 10 would say, heck yeah. When, where, what can I do to help?
I think the biggest thing is if like you really can't, if you want something like this, you can always find a Zoom link. Because now, because of COVID, like I really do feel like you can find a Zoom link. But if you are really like needing something, like you just have to.
If you feel inspired, like we need this in-person meeting where we are. Like
you just got to start the steps first.
Okay,
like, are you saying like this person has like been through the steps? Because like you really
okay. So if they haven't done the steps, they should go do the steps through Alanon.
Yes.
Then they would be
100%.
Then they'd be skillful enough or experienced enough to then go, okay, let's do this here.
I think it's really hard if you just like, it's awesome if you'd want to start something, but also there's like a little bit of an order that needs to happen, because if you've never really done the steps and you don't know what boundaries are and you're kind of living this life still with your addicted loved one, like.
So we have a lot of facilitators in our church that they got a calling.
Right.
They're hey, your kid's an addict. You should do this meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
And somehow, like, some of that stuff does work out sometimes. Like, sometimes it can give you the seed of just, like, starting something or having hope that there's, like, a better life, you know?
So what you said is no different than if you're starting a 12-step meeting. You need to have someone that's been through recovery.
Yeah. And
for us, it was your husband, Jay.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it.
Right.
So I'm like, I got this book. This thing's amazing.
Right.
I know you guys have gotten recovery through it. So what do you do? You come. You need a space to meet.
Right.
You need people to come there, and you need someone who's in recovery that's going to facilitate the meeting.
Well, even Jay, like with the Sun Run, like that was so rad. Like he just was like, oh my gosh, there's a need. Let's go fill it. You know. But obviously, he's done the 12 steps.
Right. So you need to have some that role. Is it called facilitator for?
Yeah, like a leader facilitator.
Leader facilitator has gone through the steps.
Yeah.
And even you went through the steps, but you're still going through them. Like you're not, you don't be perfect. You don't have to have this thing dialed in.
I will say, I think in like an actual Alanon meeting, like I don't think that you can really truly sponsor someone until you've actually done all the 12 steps with a sponsor.
That should be the case
with most. But sometimes, like for me, I hadn't actually.
That you did.
No, I mean, I did for the ARP.
Yeah. Oh,
but
okay,
when I started this,
not the
I had not actually done the Alanon steps.
Gotcha.
But I mean, obviously it all worked out the way it was supposed to. Like, I feel like at that time I knew enough. Like in my mind, I felt like at the time I felt like I was in recovery.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I actually did the 12 steps of Alanon that I was like, oh wow, I actually
went to another level. You went to another level.
Yeah, it was a way different level.
Yeah. And that's not much different than someone who's gone. You see those that they come to a meeting for porn, let's say, or alcohol. Right. And then they're doing the steps in recovery and they're like, you know what? I got this other thing that I need to work on. I'm going to go through those steps and work on that. And they're just consistently refining and getting better.
Yeah. That's how I feel like. I feel like before too is like, I don't want to say that I felt like I had all the answers, but I think I thought I did. And then this last like 2 years, I was very humbled. I was like extremely humble. I was like, and I now know that like, I'll never fully have this. Like, I feel like I'll always be learning. I'll always be growing. I'll always be like trying to get closer to God and his understanding for my life.
So like that sounds similar to someone who is an addict in recovery is once they're like, dude, I'm done. I've kicked this thing. Yeah. Then that's in a dangerous mode where the lifelong pursuit of improvement is key for both sides.
Well, like even like I think for a lot of people with COVID, like even with me and Jay, it was like, you know, as soon as that meeting stopped, like I could really feel like a huge difference in like just the shift in us, in each other, in our marriage. Like there was definitely a shift that like there was like a presence that wasn't there anymore. So like,
can I confess a guilt? Maybe you can get some of the guilt off me.
Yeah. What?
Because when that happened, I had been doing that for 4 or 5 years and like some normie, I felt a little out of place.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? There's enough people now. Like we got enough. Jay,
get the
run it.
Ball
it's
rolling.
all you, Jay.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need me anymore. I'm just some schlub that like figured we'd have a need, right? Go for it. And then back in my mind, I'm like, what? Come on.
Yeah.
Like I pushed you down the hill. Let's go.
Yeah.
And it kind of went off. But hey,
I think
Lord works mysterious ways. I think it's going to be better now. We stopped the podcast. We're back better than ever.
Well, and I think too, like something my sponsor says to me a lot, and I think about it a lot, is everything is exactly as it should be. So during those moments, like I think it's like any refiner's fire. It's like sometimes you have to, and this is like something my best friend talked about because I love art. And I never thought about it this way. We were talking about this painting that I was in the ARP room and I found it. Jay bought it for me for my Christmas present. So we were talking about art and she's like, you have to have the dark to have the light. To make out a picture, you have to have the contrast, right? So I think sometimes when we are in these like, I guess, downhill or slopes or whatever of life or dark period, it's like sometimes I think that you have to have those to like see the light, to know the good, to
those things suck.
I know. It's hard.
We just want the easy stuff.
I know. That's why Instagram's so hard because you're like, oh man, everyone's on vacation. All those people went to Hawaii again. That person has a new car. It's like in the world, it seems like we should always just have it together, always be happy, always doing something fun. But it's like that is not normal. That is not real life.
Always you and Jay rocking out to a song on a date night.
Well, we do that a lot. Like when we get away from our kids, it's like party mode. So that's real. But the real parts at home where it's not like that, that's real too. And you know, I guess you start learning from the dark.
Okay, so hopefully. I was just some normie. If I were moving, I would do the same thing. I was like, I need to have someone in recovery. I would go to a meeting.
Yeah.
To wherever. I'd go to 3 or 4 if I need to. Mm-hmm. I went to meetings all around. I don't know why I did. I mean, it's kind of silly to when I go back. I'm like, that's kind of like my wife probably thought I was just nuts. Like
totally.
Just ask her about that.
She's like, do you actually have a problem with that? It's probably what she thought.
Probably.
Julie starts painting rocks again. I'm just
kidding. But like maybe just because I don't like, it's hard. It's not that hard. Like anyone, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And what?
I think you can.
I think you can. But I just like put the things in play. I got a room. I got a time.
Yeah.
I have an addict in recovery that understands the steps. That's capable of sponsoring people. let's get this meeting started. Okay, great. Oh, we need a sponsor. Boom.
And sometimes they're not always going to be perfect, right? There's going to be some
and the
wonkiness,
Lord makes it grow. Like
totally.
It's not like there's an architect bit like the Lord does not want the suffering that's out there. Like Satan wants the suffering out there.
This is needed. Alanon and AA, I mean, there is like just look at the world. Like there's so much toxic out there, just so much like fake happiness out there. But this, like the real work, feeling God's love, like feeling God within you, that is the only place you're ever going to find true happiness. Like no other source is going to get that. And I know that because I've lived that other life too. Like I've gone down that road and I just know that it's nothing but emptiness. It seems fun in the beginning.
We got to end on that.
All right.
Play that outro.
Anyways, go find your God within. He's there waiting for you. Love yourself.
Boom. Not too much so you don't get a big ego. But
no, not like that, Brad. We already talked about that. It's the divine love.
We'll work with me on that one.
Okay, I will. I'll come over and help you meditate.
Thanks. We'll get in the ice bath.
Did that
sauna.
right before I got
You
over here.
did? I'm not doing that.
Bye. Radical. Was that another?
That was another hour.